This morning, President Obama laid out an ambitious new budget blueprint. It comes in at a record $3.6 trillion.
No part of my budget will be free from scrutiny or untouched by reform. We will end no-bid contracts that have wasted billions in Iraq and end tax breaks for corporations that ship jobs overseas. And we'll save billions of dollars by rolling back tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans while giving a middle-class tax cut to 95% of hardworking families.
You can't really overstate it. This new budget is a huge departure from previous years in size, scope, and direction. It comes along with a prediction that the deficit could reach $1.75 trillion. The president promises to cut that number in half before he leaves office. The question is, can he do it? If so, how? Let's talk about it with former Ohio Congressman and Fox News contributor John Kasich. He is also the former House Budget Committee chairman. Also with us, Rob Shapiro. He's with the Democratic-leaning Washington, D.C. think tank NDN. He's their director of the global initiative there and the former Undersecretary of Commerce for Economic Affairs. Now, I have told our viewers you are two of the smartest guys in Washington or Ohio, wherever you are today, Congressman, when it comes to budget matters. But let's try and keep this simple. I mean, Congressman Kasich, can the president spend the kind of money he's talking about spending, absorb this recent stimulus bill, and yet cut the deficit by 2013?
Come on, I mean, your question in and of itself is absurd, right? I mean, there's no way. I mean, we have a giant increase in spending in the stimulus bill. We have a giant increase in spending in this budget bill, all of which, you know, spending's not going to get us out of the mess that spending put us in. We're going to have significantly more debt, more foreign ownership of America, probably a inflated currency, and we're going to have higher taxes on people who risk take. And all this is, frankly, I'm worked up about it because I think it's going to end up with, we're going to have a lower standard of living, and this is not going to fix this economy, which is what we're all concerned about.
Rob, your take?
Well, we already have a lower standard of living because of the really astonishing failures of the last administration that allowed this financial and housing crisis to erupt into a deep global recession. The fact is you have substantial stimulus spending right now in order to try to boost the economy. That's temporary spending. If it works, it will raise growth and incomes and consequently revenues 2 and 3 years out. We have other additional spending, but the president has said he is returning to the rule of pay as you go, so that any additional spending has to be offset either by new revenues or by spending cuts. He has significant additional revenues in this to try to bring down the deficit. He has significant areas of spending restraint, both with respect to winding down our misadventure in Iraq, as well as cuts in lots of other programs.
Rob,
so look, it's up to the...
You use the term.
Go ahead.
Use the term in there.
John,
if it works, those are 3 key words. Hold on just a second, Congressman, because I wanted to put up a quote that ran in the L.A. Times this morning. This is a quote from William Gale. He says, "I don't see how he, meaning the president, can do it." William G. Gale, a tax policy expert at the Brookings Institution, his analysis has found that even with the most optimistic assumptions, he would expect the deficit to be $850 billion in 2013. The article goes on to say he believes that is almost surely an underestimate because his calculations assume the economy will not worsen and another stimulus bill will not be needed. Congressman, you agree?
Hey, look, John, here's the bottom line. I was the chief architect of the first balanced budget in 40 years. We dragged Bill Clinton to the balanced budget agreement. Frankly, his people wanted to get that done. We pushed them there. We made hard choices. We reduced taxes. And as a result of reducing taxes, providing incentives, and shrinking government, interest rates were low, and we had a tremendous middle of the 90s towards the end. I would agree. I think Republicans did not do their job after 2000. It fell apart. and they had too much spending. But for this guy to think we're going to fix this by even spending more with these stimulus packages that are not very well related to any kind of economic growth, and they're not one-time spending. We are in a wash in a sea of red ink. The deficits are mind-boggling. The debt is terrible, and it will not allow us to have a recovery that we need in this country.
As you're speaking, Congressman, Rob is shaking his head. Rob, go ahead.
Well, there's so many things to correct in those remarks. First of all, the president wasn't dragged into a balanced budget amendment. President Clinton, he led the country to a balanced budget amendment. I know to a balanced budget conditions. I know that because I was the architect of his budget plan in the 1992 campaign, which always led there. And the fact is, we got there in part by raising tax rates on high-income people, which we did in '93, as well as cutting spending. And that plan, that same approach, is the approach that President Obama is fundamentally following. And I'm sorry, the stimulus has sunsetted spending. It is not permanent spending. In the absence of that, this economy will continue to spiral down. People's incomes will continue to fall. Production will continue to fall. Trade will continue to fall. Investment will continue to fall. And the budget deficit will balloon to really unfathomable dimensions.
I don't know whether this
and
gentleman
finally,
has
let's
seen
remember,
the Dow.
and finally,
have you seen what the markets are saying about these plans? They're getting killed.
And finally, let's remember that when the Republicans came to power last time, they had a massive budget surplus, which they turned into enormous budget deficits.
We also had some terror attacks and other things that entered in there.
Hey,
Rob,
John, let me just I never saw him in the rooms when we negotiated the balanced budget. That's fantasy work.
All right, Congressman Kasich, Rob Shapiro, thank you both. More ahead.
If you want answers